Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining today's webinar. I see there's quite a few people already online, which is great to see. This is our second office hours that we're running for our region, so super excited to introduce our second customer. Before we jump into the case study, so just a couple of housekeeping items. Miles is going to be speaking for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then we're going to have the rest of the time available for Q&A. So really this is a chance for you all to be asking questions directly to Miles. Feel free to send him your toughest questions and then enter them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So feel free to enter those in at any point during the session, and then we'll address those at the very end. So I guess I just wanted to start with a little bit of an introduction to Miles. He was our first customer in New Zealand, and so he holds a very dear spot in our Snowflake community here locally. I learned pretty quickly that he's not that Miles Davis, but he was one of our earliest adopters in the region. And personally, I love those early customers, because they're the ones that are willing to sort of try something that seems a bit risky, but it's new, and he was from the get-go really a great customer to work with. I asked Miles for sort of his, well, I said hobbies, but really his passions in life, and he said, well, number one was to be the best dad possible, which is a very nice first passion in your life, Miles. The second was that he's a DIY enthusiast, and his current project is he's working on a custom letterbox that was designed by his wife. So I don't know if Miles, if you want to share some photos of that later. And then finally, his love for the outdoors, and I guess that's true most people out in New Zealand. Beautiful, beautiful country. So, yep, that's just a little bit of an intro into Miles. He will dive into more of obviously the Harmoney story. Again, our first customer in New Zealand. So they jumped on, I think, over a year ago now with us. So he'll kind of walk through their journey and talk about why they chose Snowflake, and again, be open for questions at the very end. Okay, Miles, it's all you.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. So I thought I'd first start off with a little bit about Harmoney. So we're Australasia's largest personal lending marketplace, having facilitated about $1.2 billion of personal loans. Something quite unique about Harmoney is that we're a 100% online process, and for those customers that get loans through us, we've got an NPS score of 80, which is pretty very high in the financial industry. We're approaching 5 years old, and we've got 110 employees, and we've got 3 people in our data science team. And we have the fortunate pleasure of being a Snowflake customer for 1 year now. So as part of our process of moving to Snowflake, we first thought, what were our problems? So we had a traditional batch-orientated approach where we would load data incrementally and reprocess our entire transform mark tables daily. This process was taking up to 8 hours, which meant reports weren't ready until mid-morning. And when something broke, it was much later than that, which was really frustrating our users. We ran a SQL Server in AWS and were spending a lot of time optimizing the queries and monitoring service performance. And upgrading to faster machines took us quite a reasonable amount of effort, but didn't result in significant performance gains. However, it did lock us into high fixed costs 24/7, where we really only needed the extra processing power at certain times of the day. Now, our users were really keen for us to not only fix our performance issues, but they were also keen to get intraday updates so that they could respond to changes throughout the day. And they wanted much more comprehensive reports which required new data sources, and they wanted to visualize and explore that data themselves. So it became pretty obvious to us that to achieve this, that we needed a step change in our platform. Why did we choose Snowflake? We looked at a variety of cloud data warehouse platforms and reasonably quickly narrowed in on Snowflake. We did a proof of concept using our largest data sets, and we loaded those into Snowflake and ran some of our most common queries across that, and pretty much immediately identified that Snowflake was approximately 10 times faster than our current platform. And that was even just using this extra small Snowflake warehouse. It was really the performance of Snowflake that set it apart from anything else. With Snowflake, able to separate out the compute and the storage. That means that you have multiple compute warehouses. We can have multiple compute warehouses, all reading and writing to the same database objects. And that allows us to improve our concurrency and separate out different workloads into what we have running, which is 4 warehouses. So the first warehouse that we've got is we have a data pipeline warehouse where we consolidate all that streaming data being loaded through Snowflake into our data warehouse. And then we have an ETL warehouse, which we use obviously for our transformations and loading our mark tables daily and incrementally throughout the day. And then we have a Power warehouse for loading some of our largest tables. And that's a 32-core machine, whereas most of that daily incremental loads are just an 8-core machine. And the final one, the fourth one, is an analytical warehouse. So we use that by all our reporting users. And they use that throughout the day, so that doesn't ever conflict or have no concurrency issues if we're loading data throughout the day with those reporting users. And all those warehouses, we set those to stop when there's no activity and resume on demand, so that we pay per second for the usage of those warehouses. The optimization of Snowflake is phenomenal. Previously, we had to spend a lot of time optimizing queries and managing indexes, statistics, etc. However, Snowflake, it stores its data compressed in S3 in Amazon and optimizes our queries, which means we've never had to do any manual performance optimization since moving to Snowflake, which saves us a huge amount of time and pain. Snowflake management protects us in many ways. Snowflake is fail-safe, which automatically retains our backups of the database for us. And it also has the ability to run queries at a historical point in time, which with time travel, which allows us to roll back changes, including undropping tables, which can be incredibly useful at times. Another major reason for choosing Snowflake was the ability to store and query both structured and semi-structured data. We consume a lot of JSON and XML files from our SaaS providers, and Snowflake allows us to either use these as schemas on demand, transform the data into tables, or even just place views over the top of these semi-structured data. And the semi-structured data we're tending to find is incredibly rich in value for us, and previously it was actually quite challenging to get the data out of that. Snowflake is also ANSI compliant, which has made migration much easier for us. The SQL syntax is quite similar to SQL Server, which made the migration fast, and for some queries it was just a simple cut and paste. We really have enjoyed developing Snowflake because it goes beyond the basic SQL with plenty of useful aggregate and Windows functions like greatest, row number, rank, etc. And Snowflake also handles time zones easily when you store your data as UTC, and as it converts it into any time zone required on demand, adjusting for daylight savings. That might sound simple, but it's quite complicated and incredibly useful, especially when you're trying to understand the data and standardize it from different SaaS data sources. Cost, obviously, was a pretty large factor in our decision, and for us it was a cost-neutral decision to implement. However, given the additional benefits with no additional cost, it's kind of no-brainer for us, really. And also the storage cost at roughly $25 a terabyte per month. It's we can sleep safely knowing that we never really have to worry about running out of this space again, and can store as much as we really need to. Availability and security was obviously critical requirements, and Snowflake ticked all of these boxes. And for data sovereignty reasons, we did have to wait for Snowflake to launch in AWS Sydney before we could go live last year. It's quite a good time, really. Another great thing about Snowflake is that it is independent and integrates with a large number of partners. Snowflake's ODBC and JDBC drivers open the doors to many tools. Alongside Snowflake, we've implemented a data pipeline tool, Alerma, which streams data for us into Snowflake's Snowpipe. And then we also use tools like Tableau and Excel for reporting, connecting directly to Snowflake. And then we have data integration. We just use SQL scripts and Python, which also has a large number of pretty powerful libraries for connecting and manipulating the data for Snowflake. And various other different client tools like dbeaver for connecting to Snowflake. What have we achieved? So we've built a near real-time data warehouse where we have a 15-minute roughly data latency from our production SaaS data sources, and we average about 3 million source updates a day. We've increased our data sources from SaaS providers from 1 to 12, and that includes SaaS providers like Salesforce, Google Analytics, Google Ads, Marketo, Intercom, and we also source Kafka streaming data as well. Our reports tend to run 10 times faster, like I mentioned before, as part of our POC, and then that low latency in those reports really allows us, our customers or users, to respond to the changes throughout the day. And it's also changed or reduced our daily load. It used to be 7 hours, and in Snowflake that's reduced to 40 minutes, and that includes a load of a new table that we were able to do, which is a 1.2 billion row table with 100 columns, and it does that in 30 minutes. So 30 of that 40 minutes is actually a new table. And this 30-minute job that processes that 1.2 billion row table, it's quite a good example of the scaling up power of Snowflake for us, because when we ran it on an extra small warehouse, that used to take about 2 hours. But we run it on a medium warehouse, and it takes 30 minutes. So it costs us exactly the same amount of money to process that table. However, we get an hour and a half early, which is pretty useful. And with the low latency and completeness of data sources, we're able to perform some near real-time automated machine learning. For example, we receive our web click-through events within seconds, people coming to our website, and we're able to then use that data to help predict the customer value to us, and we send that back to Google to help Google learn the types of customers that we'd like to market to and how much we can pay for those ads for those people. So overall, with Snowflake, we're absolutely thrilled. It's provided, the step change that our business is after. And, after spending the last year or so gathering a lot of data, we're looking forward to deriving further value out of that over the next year or so. So very exciting times ahead. That's me. Thank you, Kelly.
Great. Thanks so much, Miles. That's really, I think you kind of answered some of this first question, but maybe if you could elaborate a little bit. So in terms of the migration, I know you said that because it's ANSI SQL, a lot of the existing queries were pretty simple to migrate. But I guess overall, how was that migration? How difficult was it? And yes, for those simple ones, I guess it was straightforward. But was there any other refactoring you needed to do moving out of that legacy SQL server?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we took it as we took it as an opportunity, obviously, to improve. So it wasn't just moving apples to apples. So, as part of that, we've redesigned our data warehouse, and so some of the simpler reports, obviously, we were able to move quite straightforward because for the reports that we're sourcing from, say, Salesforce, that was on a previous platform. And we moved those over, and some of those objects were pretty much the same. So it was very swift to move those reports, all running out of SQL and using, whether they ran out of Excel or sometimes we use reporting services. Actually, it was very easy just to migrate the code and migrate those reports. But saying that, we also, have taken the opportunity to tidy up our house, and we're finding that, for example, we're able to build our reports using common tables so that we have less reconciliation issues between different reports reporting different numbers. And that's where, for example, that 1.2 billion row table has been incredibly useful to have, because we used to be able to work out, used to have to work out parts of that on the fly and on demand as and when required. And the ways that we did that was, very slow, a lot of processing, and it meant that we had to do a lot of manual calculations. But now that we have that table, it means that we can use that as a common source, and always making sure that our reports reconcile and are quick as well. So the migration itself, all the tools that we've chosen, it's still SQL, still using schemas and database tables, and there was a little bit of learning around designing some of the hierarchies and the schemas and permissioning, but very much that was more the advantage to us because Snowflake's got some pretty useful inheritance around how that permissioning works. So, we found the migration a very enjoyable process, especially given how much faster. I mean, as we've migrated, the speed of Snowflake is just so much faster whenever we have to run a query to compare it to what we had in a previous environment running Snowflake just returns instantly almost, whereas in SQL it's a bit slower in the environment we had. So, it's always pretty pleasing when that's happening.
Great, yeah, and that's something we hear quite often. It does help when you have that end goal in mind, and you can visualize where you're going, right? Because the migration is never going to be that fun of an exercise. Okay, next question that just came through. So, given that the storage on S3 is already backing up and was resilient, did you also set up any additional backup routines to separately back up the data? So you did kind of mention earlier that sort of time travel ability and all of that. But is there anything in particular, I guess, that you changed from what you were previously doing in terms of backing up your data, moving to Snowflake?
Yeah, well, we very much rely on Snowflake and Snowflake's management of that data. So we basically inherently just use the Snowflake backup failsafe. Saying that most of our data we can replay most of that data. So every single bit of data that goes into our Snowflake data warehouse, we actually have a copy of in S3 as well. So obviously Snowflake sits in S3, but that data pipeline that's coming through, we have kept every single event we've ever played into Snowflake. So if we ever need to create say for example, we had to create our entire environment again, it's just a matter we have all the scripts available for creating all the objects, and we'd essentially just set our data pipeline to replay from the beginning again, and that might be a billion or so events, and then we could just replay that all if needed. But apart from that, would be a scenario that if we had to rebuild everything from scratch, we could do. But essentially, we're very happy and confident that Snowflake's time travel fail-safe is there to protect us, and we'll do. We can need it if required.
Great. I guess that's more a BCP plan, or a BCP, which is always good to have in case something does happen. But yeah, a lot of our customers do rely on those built-in data protection capabilities that Snowflake provides. Okay, this is an interesting one here. So do your analysts query Snowflake directly? And then an associated question, how do you measure the cost, or I guess how do you size that appropriately? And for those who aren't too familiar with the way that Snowflake is billed, it's based on your usage by the second, right? So it's per second billing based on how big that the cluster is and how long it was running for. So yeah, first part was, do you generally query Snowflake directly? And then how do you manage the cost involved with that?
Yeah, great question. So yes, we do. I mean, as Harmoney is, obviously we're an online company, and data is incredibly important to us. And part of that is increasing the data literacy across our organisation. So we have weekly data dojo sessions where we get people together and teach them how to use SQL and write SQL queries against our Snowflake environment. We also teach them how to use Tableau and how to, so depending on if they're trying to visualise or explore the data, they might use Tableau, but if they want to get into some data and write some queries, then yes, they will use SQL against our production, data warehouse. There's a lot of ways that Snowflake protects those users or us from, them causing any issues. So, as I mentioned before, we have 4 different warehouses. So one of those is an analytical warehouse. So all of our users, their accounts are associated to the analytical warehouse. So we can we ensure that whenever they run those queries, that runs on that warehouse. And that warehouse, it's set to be an extra small box. And we monitor that box over time to make sure it's not using more credits than it should be. We can also set some quotas on that warehouse to ensure that we don't, spend too much money. Unfortunately, being extra small, it can't spend too much, to be honest. And then I go and look at the, monthly or so, how much credits across all those warehouses we're using. If some of our users were running more queries, then it's incredibly easy just to break them out into their own warehouse, so they can, so their account is associated to their own warehouse, so we can see exactly how much money they're spending on their queries, and if need be, you could bill in for that. Not that that's something that we've got to yet, but another part of that is that we do monitor queries being run at odd hours, and the great thing about Snowflake is that you can go into Snowflake's web GUI and you can look at every single query that's been run over time effectively. So we can see if there was a query run at 3 a.m. or wondering why our warehouse started up at that time, we can go and find it, which is, it's effectively, constant auditing on all the queries across our Snowflake instance, which is very useful as well. So for us, the cost way that you're able to be very granular with Snowflake is actually, it's very powerful and very useful.
Great. And so, sorry, just one sec. I just lost that question. A quick one that I kind of answered, but maybe if you wanted to add to this. So the BI tools and visualization and analytics tools, I guess, that you guys use, what are they? You mentioned Tableau. I know you guys use Data Robot. Are there any other ones that you have that you use quite often?
Most of them, pretty much. I mean, Tableau's great visualization, fantastic tool, integrates really well with Snowflake. Yes, Excel we do use as well for some of our, which is easier for us to migrate those reports across from SQL to Snowflake. What else do we use? We used to use reporting services. We actually got reporting services talking to Snowflake as well. Not that we use that really anymore. But no, those are, and as you mentioned, Data Robot. So we use, Data Robot can connect directly to Snowflake, and through that, we obviously can do some of our automated machine learning, and so as that data gets imported into our Data Robot, it runs some visualization, both data times more features and most supported, et cetera. So, that obviously integrates incredibly well as well. But those, and Python as well. We use Python, not obviously from a visualization point of view, but certainly from, getting the data out of Snowflake and also integrating that data. So, Python's got, Alchemy and some other great libraries for analysing that data in Snowflake. But that's the breadth of the tools that we use.
Cool. And I remembered what I wanted to mention now, is that going back to the usage tracking, a lot of people will hook up those BI tools to Snowflake because, of course, we expose a lot of the account usage data, so you can visualize that in a way that maybe you want to set up alerts based on, how long a warehouse was running or how long a query was running, that kind of thing. Okay, next question, more around ingestion. So how do you deal with changes to the pipeline when the schema of files might change over time?
Yeah, great question. So, look, it's incredibly easy, fortunately. So we do, as I mentioned, we use a tool called Illuma now. Illuma, connects to us, majority of those cloud data sources that we use, but Illuma is able to, fortunately for us, when, for example, Salesforce, an attribute gets added, Illuma's smart enough to know that attribute's been added, it works out the data type, and it will go and create that field in Snowflake for us, and then it will stream that data through. So it effectively auto maps those data type changes. The only challenge, not the data type changes, it automatically maps those new fields. The only challenge we get is that sometimes a field might change from a date to a bar chart or something. So when that happens, effectively the events will come out of our source systems and they'll go into our data pipeline, the Illuma, and that will recognise the data type's changed and it will hold that event for us. So we'll need to go and change the data type in Snowflake and then play those events through. So we never lose any data, and we get alerts on those, and it's just then a mode of effectively restreaming those events coming through. That all works very seamlessly for us.
Great. And just another quick one to add to that one. Other than Illuma, are there any other tools that you use for that data loading? I think previously we spoke, you had some Talend. Is that still the case?
Yeah, we do still use Talend a little bit for a few cases for integrating with some of our other systems that we have here at Harmoney, and that's been very useful for joining a lot of different files together. But predominantly we're using Python.
Python, yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, two questions that are sort of similar. So security and managing, I suppose, permissions in Snowflake. So were there any challenges faced in terms of security? SQL Server does provide quite a comprehensive security and roles model. Did Snowflake provide something comparable?
Oh, absolutely. Look, I love the security in Snowflake. Yes, it does take a little bit to understand, but it's pretty simplistic once you understand it. So it has the ability, yes, it has roles. So you can create roles at, we created a hierarchy of roles. So we had, roles at schema level, roles at database level, and then we have sort of application roles, and then also user roles. So, and those have all got inheritance across them. It also has, so objects are owned by roles roles as well. So it's very, very granular to how you allocate those positions, the permissions on each of those objects. So whether it be tables or views, it's very granular towards how you grant those permissions to those views, and whether that's select, update, insert, etc. Or you can have other permissions around being able to create tables, etc. So for us, it was, we've designed it in a way actually in the moment so that if any new table gets created, we automatically have a script that runs that applies permissions to that, although Snowflake have recently announced, which we've started to use, a feature grant. So whenever you create any new tables or objects in your schemas of your databases, that it actually applies the permissions that you've granted on all future objects within that schema, which is we found very useful. So which is very, very useful. So it's it's one of the a good benefit of Snowflake from our perspective.
Great, that's good to hear. And I guess something along the lines of business cases where, we talked a lot about the technology, and that's sort of the first thing that draws people to Snowflake, I think, especially in the database world where nothing new has really come about in a while. Technology aside, though, how did you go about selling that to the business? Was that a challenge? Did you find that easy? I know you said early on it was clear that you needed to change. Was there a moment, or was there something in particular that tipped the needle for you guys?
Yeah, yes. For us, it was, unfortunately, we had some frustrated users with our current environment to start with. So they were dead keen for us to make some improvements. We've certainly got an ethos here of, creating the best, and you've got best of breed, etc. So for us, the major business case for getting Snowflake on board was really to help improve the speed that we were able to deliver those reports and how fast they run, and minimise any latency issues. For the business to be able to also see the data that we've got out of our JSON. So we get a lot of JSON files from being a personal loan company. We get credit files, and they'll come through as JSON files, and there's a lot of good data in there that we can use. Much easier in Snowflake to help understand, the population of people coming through, and how we can, create a better experience for them. So, making that data accessible and easier for us to get value out of, proving to the business that, once we have this data, that we can do more with it. And as part of that was, is integrating with our machine learning as well. So, being able to extract that data from all those different data types, and then being able to then look at those and see what's important and what features we should add to Data Robot, allows us to, really be faster at what we do. And certainly save a lot of time. So, and it was essentially looking at the cost of Snowflake, being pretty comfortable that we could manage those costs, being, something that could grow quite easily, certainly from a compute point of view, but knowing that we can manage it easily, so that we could compare it to our current costs, and then just showing the extra benefits that our users will get out of that. So it was, like I said before, sort of a no-brainer once we worked all of that out. But certainly we do find, being a cloud company, that integrating with lots of cloud solutions certainly makes that business case easier as well.
Great. Well, I think that is all the time we have. So if you have more questions, or if your questions weren't gotten to today, we will follow up with you. And I should have mentioned this earlier. Harmoney does have a published case study with us, so there's some more details about everything that Miles spoke about. All of these sort of outcomes that are listed on this slide, I think, speak for themselves. I mean, 10 times faster reporting, going from 7 hours to that 40 minutes and 5 minutes for incremental. And then that last JSON piece is really huge for a lot of people, being able to bring JSON alongside your other sources. So thanks again, Miles, for your time. And thanks, everyone, for joining. We will send out a recording as soon as that's ready to everyone that registered. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.